And welcome to Executive Zen. I'm your host, Dr. Steve Taubman, and we are now 34 weeks, I think, into our show. This has been a lot of fun. I've had some remarkable guests here, and today's no exception. We're gonna have a lot of fun today, talking about what we love talking about, which is mindfulness and its application to your life. Applied mindfulness, as we call it, the ability to take our ability to control our mental state and quiet our minds and use that to our benefit in our day-to-day lives. And so this is all about leading consciously and profiting responsibly. If you've been following the show, then you know that we've been looking at this from a number of different angles, but always with the idea in mind of finding tools for you that will help you to affect a change in your organization, a change within yourself, and to get the very best out of your life and out of your work. So thanks for being here. We've had a lot of great comments coming in. If you've got any comments yourself that you'd like to share, we hope you will. You're also welcome to pop on to the page we have, which is a special page that was made for a radio show I did not long ago. I was a guest on Jenny McCarthy's show not long ago, and I made a special page for her guests, stevetaubman.com/Jenny. That allowed people access to a free digital download of a good chunk of my new book, Buddha in the Trenches. So if you'd like to take advantage of that, go to stevetaubman.com/Jenny. And until I take that down, that'll still be at your disposal. So go ahead and enjoy that. And again, share this with your friends. Let everybody know what you've gained from this experience. Feel free to keep it from your competitors, and otherwise spread the word far and wide. So today we're talking about integrating mindfulness, which is essentially what we love talking about, integrating mindfulness into your day-to-day life. What's in the way? What stops us? What keeps us from being able to utilize really simple skills, simple tools, simple practices and rituals that can have a profound effect on your life? And yet how many of us do it, right? Well, I'm always asked that question. If it's so great, why doesn't everybody do it? Well, exercise is so great. How many people do that? Eating well is so great. How many people do that? We tend to shy away from things that are good for us for any number of reasons, and I think that might be part of today's conversation. And another part of today's conversation could certainly be how to tweak that part of our mind to be able to inspire ourselves and motivate ourselves to do things that are actually in our best interest. And one of the great things about our guest today is that he and his business partner have constructed a process that allows you to do this easily, that will kind of allow it to fit into your busy life. So we'll go into that today. So without further ado, let me introduce my guest to you for today. So today we're going to be joined by one of a pair of innovators by the name of Jim Justice. Now, Jim is a consummate entrepreneur. He dropped out of college to found his first company, Justice Communications, at the age of 20. And since then, he's founded numerous companies spanning consumer products and technology, including Grateful Pet, which I want to hear more about, Jim, when we come on. IPIN, he's going to tell me I pronounced that wrong, probably IPIN now, which is owned by Intel, Touch Health Inc., and a communication platform for small medical, which is a small communication platform for small medical practices. Jim ultimately earned a BS in economics from Virginia Commonwealth University, an MBA from Keenan Flagler at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Great city, Jim. And Jim's been awarded several U.S. patents in electronic payments and secure messaging. Now, that's all very business-like, right? But throughout the bumpy ride of entrepreneurship, and we all know it is and can be a very bumpy ride, Jim discovered a parallel path pursuing his spiritual truth. Again, that's something that we're going to want to have a lot of conversation about. And in 2016, Jim attended the Academy of Intuition Medicine in Sausalito, where he studied various intuitive and energetic systems, along with an exploration of the human state of consciousness. And then in 2017, along with Steve Second, and you'll have to help me there, Jarl Forsman and Bill Gladstone, Jim founded Gratitude Publications to build and market the Vibe mobile app. Some of you might have heard of it. The idea to create a platform for daily guidance from thought leaders in mindfulness and spirituality has since blossomed, and the Vibe serves as a go-to source for a daily dose of mindfulness for those living in a busy world. Before I introduce Jim, I will mention in brief passing that Bill Gladstone, his business partner, has been in publishing for many years, and works with some of our favorite people like Eckhart Tolle, Barbara DeAngelis, Neil Donald Walsh, Tom Hartman, and on and on and on. So we're in very good company here, and I'm very excited about bringing our friend Jim Justice here. And let me push a button so that Jim can be seen. And Jim, you are here. Welcome.
Howdy.
Howdy. So I always like to ask, a lot of the people who come on this show have a tendency to be mobile. They're out there speaking, they're consulting, and it puts them on the road. Are you a road warrior? Have you been traveling a lot in this capacity?
Not so much. No.
Oh, you're lucky. It gets old, I'll tell you that. So, and where's home for it? Where's home for you, Jim?
Sausalito, California.
Oh, what a gorgeous place. Just a hop, skip, and a jump away from San Francisco, right there on the bay. Beautiful, scenic place. San
Francisco is right out that window, which is
you're welcome.
I always know it's there, and I can get there in like 10 minutes.
That's fantastic.
But I've got everything else I want: quiet and serenity, and it's good.
You don't live on a houseboat, do you? A lot of people there live.
I do.
You do.
I do. Do you know these houseboats?
I've seen those houseboats, and if I'm not mistaken, I think that Alan Watts at one time lived in Sausalito on a houseboat.
He did.
Right.
He did. And I forgot, the song "Dock on the Bay."
Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, Otis Redding.
Sitting on the Dock of the Bay was written about 100 yards from here.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's a special place.
It is a special place indeed. I think a lot more people would probably live there if they could afford to live there. It's fantastic. So Jim, you've walked an interesting road yourself, and I can relate to that. I don't know how much of my backstory you've heard, but I was a chiropractor for 14 years, and I ended up selling my chiropractic practice and becoming a magician, and then becoming a hypnotist. So I performed corporate magic, then I did stage hypnosis shows all over the world. I was the official hypnotist for MTV Spring Break. Dirty job.
Wow, okay. All right.
And then in the course of that work, along with my parallel interests like you in spirituality, started developing a meditation practice, started seeing parallels between everything I was doing and meditation, and everything that was stopping me, and a lack of mindfulness. So I really started digging in deeper. I ended up writing my first book, Unhypnosis, which is about waking up from hypnosis into a life of a life of being alert and awake and present. And that's been kind of my trajectory. So you started out kind of in the world of what, software engineering or entrepreneurship, or talk a little bit about your backstory.
Well, I got started out, I guess you mentioned Justice Communications. That was when I was 20 years old. I wrote a business plan on basically a cable concept for creating an online guide for your cable TV. I mean, that's all been done. That's been done now. Worked on that for a few years, gave some other people some good ideas, but it was a good foray into how not to do some things and how to do some things right. We then started with a buddy, looked for something a little more tangible that we could build and start. And we started a company called Grateful Pet. And Grateful Pet was gourmet gravy for dry dog food.
Cool.
It was
the
really
dogs take to it.
It's funny. It's just kind of this little company, but at the time, as small as it was, and it's kind of we knew that it was kind of there was some levity around the subject. We kind of enjoyed that and played it up, but it was very serious to us because we wanted to make it work, and we raised $70,000 to do the entire company. We ended up getting it, and we had it in 3,000 stores nationwide, and
nice.
It went pretty well.
Impressive.
Yeah. So went from there. That company actually became an online wholesale distribution system for small pet stores. So, as the industry evolved, the pet supply industry evolved, and throughout the 90s and into the 2000s, the PetSmarts and the large chains kind of started to take over the majority of the distribution, and the little pet stores needed to compete on efficiency as well. So they needed better ways to order products, and we stepped in and helped them do that. That company is still around. It's called wholesalepet.com.
Oh.
After that, I actually went to business school after doing that, starting that, and moved to California to start an electronic payment system, with the vision that this payment system would be the underlying, grassroots payment system for the internet. We really had some grand ideas for where we're going to take that. Mm-hmm. And it did okay. We ended up merging with a company in Ireland in 2001. That company subsequently was purchased by Intel a few years later. And we didn't quite become the PayPal that we were going for, but cheers to those guys for doing it.
Yeah, right.
And then, just most recently started touchhealth.com, which is, it's small. It's a online medical forms and communication systems for small medical practices. We have a lot of chiropractors using it, by the way. We have a lot of psychotherapists that use this. It gives these smaller entities some of the tools that some of the larger entities have, at a very low cost.
Gotcha.
And then the Vibe, I guess, to go right into how we started the Vibe.
I'm curious about because you, even before you actually started Vibe, you obviously started developing some interest in a particular, in mindfulness and in a particular way of thinking and being that maybe wasn't part of your world before that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so throughout that whole career, I was majorly stressed out, tons of just, ridden with anxiety and, some depression in there. And it's classic, I think, lack of mindfulness, and a lot of entrepreneurship is because you're living in the future. You're living, and you're focused on your dream, right? And you're not really enjoying the ride. I mean, it looks like people are enjoying the ride. You raise a lot of money and you buy yourself a Ducati and sport around town and party. And this is the way it was definitely back in the turn 2000, right? 2000 or 1999, we were partying like it was 1999, and we're like, internet entrepreneurs and all is good. But along with that, I mean, this is like, for me especially, you feel like you have the world on your shoulders. Expectations are really high. For me, one of the biggest challenges and throughout my life has been dealing with expectations. Whenever there are high expectations, it's an anxiety-inducing situation for me, and that is entrepreneurship, right? So you got these forces all driving you away from being present and being grounded and doing the things that we need to be doing to be mindful and healthy and happy. So that really carried me. I rode that bumpy train all the way through Touch Health, which is this last kind of company that we've been working on. And about 4 years ago, I had a good friend convinced me to do the Academy of Intuition Medicine with Francesca McCartney, which is actually, I was living in the city at the time, and it was in Sausalito. And it was a fairly intensive course on, they kind of started off with basic meditation. Through the first year, you work a lot with chakras and grounding cords and some interesting things that your typical kind of business guy doesn't really get into too much, right? And then the second year, you take it a step further and you work on energetic healing. It's really a class for healers. I mean, a lot of, and you end up with a degree. The state of California actually has a degree that you can officially earn in integrative medicine. Or no, this is not integrative medicine, in intuition medicine.
Okay.
And so I got that degree. And a lot of healers go to this class so they can like hang the sign saying that they're certified.
Mm-hmm.
So the second year, you spend a lot of time learning to physically heal systems in your body, and huge part of that is the psychology component, right? And, grounding out the things that are bothering us and keeping us unstable, and the anxiety and the depression and all of that. So, yeah, that was my first kind of step into this world, and it was a valuable one. I mean, it was. I also did. I took just a basic course in meditation actually before I did that, and that was hugely helpful. And you just learn to meditate on a mantra, which the very basics of mindfulness, extremely handy tool to have.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you want to continue on, like, talk about the vibe?
Well, yeah, I'm going to just reflect a couple of things back, because I'm
Sure.
interestingly, what I think it sounds like probably gave you a listening for this whole school of thought was your own neurosis, your own anxiety, your own exhaustion. You were working really hard, and I wanted to also speak to what you were saying about living in the future, right? As an entrepreneur, you're kind of picturing, what you want to have happen. You're working really hard. You're getting some of the, perks and benefits and fun stuff that happens along the way, but there's not a lot of just grounding and being present in the moment. And sometimes you don't know it, right? Sometimes you're just like so busy doing that you don't realize that you're no longer doing it from a place of passion, but now you're obsessive about it, right? Now you're kind of in this intense energy that's hard to break free of.
Yeah.
So,
external forces kind of working you that direction too. I mean, you have investors see where they want this thing to be and what they want out of it,
right.
And so you have to live there too, right?
So that's a really important thing, because if we're talking to to business leaders here, we need to be mindful of the fact that none of us have the luxury of just saying, I think I'm just going to go off and like live in an ashram for a month and and just gain serenity as a result of being away from the actual demands of my life. The demands are still there, but and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the trick is, or the opportunity is, to find ways of replenishing ourselves along the way, so that we can kind of come back to center and come back to center and come back to center while we're still in the battle, while we're still doing what we need to do.
I would say that would be extremely helpful way to look at it. As long as you maintain where that center is, and then you can get back to it. I would also say, and it's something I've been working on, and man, this is ongoing work, right? Mm-hmm. Not necessarily, let's not call it work. This is an ongoing experience. And there's a lot of power in perspective, right? So if I can look at my goals and objectives without necessarily becoming infatuated with my goals and objectives, or somehow imagining my life meeting my goals and objectives, or really that's fine, but requiring reaching my goals and objectives to be happy, that's the problem, right? You start to, and you mentioned this in your book, it's great. I mean, the Buddha in the trenches was just so on point, right? Because that's what we do. We marry our opportunity, just even our opportunity to be happy, with meeting goals. And then you're missing everything along the way. Even if you meet your goals, you'll find out it's not really going to make you happy anyway, but because there's always another goal. But you're missing so much of life living along the way, right? And I think that's something I've been personally working on, and for sure it lowers your heart rate, and sleep better, and I'm much happier in general than I used to be. Still got a lot of work to do, and probably always will, but yeah.
It's like in my first book, I talk about it like, playing it like a game rather than like a battle, right? So you're still trying to win,
Right.
But there's still that kind of lightheartedness about it. Sometimes for me, it's also, when I get into that place, I just say to myself, what if I'm retired? Like what if right now I'm already retired? Like none of the stuff I'm doing now is things that I have to do. They're just things I want to do.
Right.
And how would I hold it differently? Would I maybe take a few things off my plate, or would I be more efficient with other things, or would I just kind of laugh some of this stuff off while I'm still doing it, but I'm not treating it like it's life or death.
You know, we both have friends who are retired who are plenty happy or
Yeah.
seemingly happy in what they're doing. But
Yeah.
I have friends who are retired who are miserable. And I have friends that are working who are happy as a clam.
Yeah.
And they just love it because they love the experience, right? They
Yeah.
love every day. They love the conversation they're having, what I'm doing right now. And they're not so set on the goals necessarily. And then I have friends who are working who are absolutely miserable as well. So I don't know if they're even related, right? Your state of happiness is your choice and that's the hardest thing, right? I've been working on this for years, right? And still struggle with that. That hey, it's a choice.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, she quoted on Facebook the other day something from Michael Beckwith, and I'm going to get it wrong. But she said she had asked him how he managed his schedule because his schedule was so incredibly tough, and he's one of those road warriors like you were talking about. And he said, she said, "How do you do it? You only slept like 4 hours, 4 nights in a row, or something." He said, "I just put." How did he say this? He said, "I just put myself in a world where I've got plenty of energy." I mean, he just basically wills himself into a world where he's got energy. I mean, it's a choice, right? If I get a bad night of sleep, I can dwell on it, and I'm going to be tired.
Well, that's funny because it goes back to the whole thing about the stories we're telling ourselves as opposed to the thing itself, right? Something
Right.
happens, and then we tell ourselves, "Oh, I'm going to be so tired today. This is going to be the worst." We'll actually tell ourselves, "This is going to be a terrible day."
Right.
I didn't think last night. This is going
It
to be
will
a
be.
terrible day. Well, thanks for because one of my guests recently is an expert in NLP, neuro linguistic programming, which is part of the
Oh
mind.
yeah.
Says that the subconscious mind can tell the difference when you say something, whether you're reporting something or you're programming it in for the future, right? So
Yeah.
you end up saying, nothing good ever happens to me. You think you're just reporting on a past event, but what you're doing is you're actually programming yourself for the future event of nothing good ever happening to you.
I'm still working on that part of it. They say, you basically imagine your future, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever, however it kind of conflicts with some of the concept of being mindful, right? That you imagine if you imagine the future and you see yourself living in the future that you want, then it will transpire. You have to believe that it's going to be there. I still struggle with that. Because the counter to that is too stressful, right? That's the
Yeah.
biggest, because that's saying, no, be careful, because if you're incapable of imagining that and you sink into bad thoughts, you're gonna pay a hefty price. I don't really need that stress in my life either. Like the
Well, I
fear
think,
that a negative thought is going to spin my life out of control. I don't know, man.
yeah.
I'm just saying.
Well, it's that random negative thought. The problem isn't necessarily that I had a negative thought and now I've just doomed myself to a future of misery, but rather what are my dominant thoughts? How am I taking that negative thought and building a cocoon around it by having another negative thought about the fact that I had a negative thought, about the fact that I had a negative thought. It's like, you see, I just thought another bad thought. That was another one, and that was another one. And then the next thing you know, all you're doing is dwelling on the negative. And mindfulness does play a part in that, because in order to recognize that a particular dominant nature of thought requires you to get out of thought. You need to be backstage to see it happening. So, in my world as a hypnotist, I say, be your own hypnotist, right? Program yourself, come up with your own strategy for what you want. But you always know I'm not that future event. I'm not the thoughts I'm having. I'm, sort of the author, not the book.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. That's good philosophy. Let's go back. Let's talk about vibe. I'm very interested in how you connected with Bill, how you guys made this thing happen, what's happening with it, and what the value is to John Q. Public.
Well, the vibe started. My neighbors here, who I became good friends with, had a daily inspirational newsletter, and
Okay.
really, we don't use the word inspirational because inspirational kind of implies temporary endorphin rush, right? Um, but they had it's a mindfulness newsletter, and um, they had a pretty good, several thousand users. Some Hollywood people were following them and reading these things every day and sending comments back. And I signed up, and I thought their stuff was really good.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. It's just their writing is fantastic, and it kind of sets you straight. We started talking, and we started talking about email delivery not being a very good medium for this type of messaging.
Right.
And then we talked about the opportunities that we would have if we built an app specifically for delivering this type of messaging.
Right.
And that's how the whole thing really got going. We started talking about building an app for them specifically.
Mm-hmm.
I then met Bill, who was very dialed into the publication side of this world, as you know, as you mentioned. And Bill and I were involved in an art project together in New York City. And in knowing each other, talking to each other, as I was working on the app for my neighbors, this is Steve Sakon and Jarl Forsman, who he mentioned earlier. And talking to them, we started thinking about maybe doing a multi-author platform. Mm-hmm. And allowing other authors to also use this tool we were building for their followers. And spoke to Bill about it. Bill was like fully on board, loved it. And he thought the authors would not only kind of relish the opportunity to kind of put something out there in a premium channel for their followers, but they all have content that is kind of already prepared, that just needs a conduit, right? Mm-hmm. To get to their people. And it wouldn't necessarily be that hard for the publishers. I'm sorry, for the authors. By the way, we call the authors thought leaders because they kind of take more of a role, I think, than just being authors. They actually have somewhat of an instructional role in how they do this. So we built this app, and the way it works is basically in lieu of getting an email each day, you get a notification on your phone. Right. And so it's kind of a little bit more in your face as a reminder. Hey, and one Neil Donald Walsh, for example, has posted a new message for you today. The message or the main post, we try to encourage the thought leaders to keep them to 100 words or less. Mm-hmm. So something that you can kind of read while you're eating your cereal, maybe, or before you get out of bed, maybe. And then we have a unique feature, which I think is really valuable, and that is that it will remind you a few times throughout the day of the main post. And that's called the vibe, right? So the vibe is a distilled version of the main post, and it could be an affirmation. Mm-hmm. It could be more of just kind of a sagacious statement, but it generally should remind you of the bigger statement. And there's some science behind this, right? So learning science says, and we all know this, right? My mom used to say, repeat something 3 times and you will remember it. Doesn't always work, right? It works less the older you get. So when you turn 50, you have to repeat something 5 times. But anyway, so repeating things, I believe this is right, doubles your retention rate. So you can imagine if you hear something once,
Can you say that again?
If you hear something once, I think your retention rate is about 10%. If you hear something, if you repeat it several times, it doubles. So it might get a 25%. If you use something that you have been taught or that you've heard, it goes to 90%.
Right.
And using means telling somebody else about it, instructing someone else with it, or using it in your everyday life. So the way the vibe works is we the reminders are not just supposed to serve up a repetitive nature to the message. They're supposed to hit you at the point at a certain point in your day where you can actually use this. And by the way, this is a typical vibe. It's Neil Donald Walsh's from yesterday. I loved this one. I thought it was a very powerful. So I don't know if you can see. So this is like Neil's post from yesterday. Okay.
I can't actually read it. It's very small on my screen, but
so this is the main post here.
Yeah.
And then down below he includes a vibe. Now, by the way, authors can also, they have a choice. They can include a short meditation along with their daily post, which is pretty cool. And they can also include an audio file, which typically would be them reading the post to you. So you might listen to it in the car, or something like that.
Good idea. Yeah.
So his vibe from yesterday was, and this is what you would be reminded with. I have mindset. You can change how often you want to be reminded, but mindset to 3 every 3 hours.
Okay.
A little bit aggressive, but I own the company. So we have, he said, there is no condition that is good or bad. It just is. Stop making value judgments. That's it. So, all right. There's no situation. There's no condition that's good or bad. It just is. Man, you know what? When you're in the middle of the day, and that just happens to be from yesterday. I thought that was a good one. And it probably struck me in a really good way yesterday because I'm in a situation where I probably at the time was dealing with something a little stressful. And I got to take that message and say, you know what? It just is. I'm gonna let it go. And the value there is not that I just saw it again, but it's also that I got to use it at the time that I got reminded about it. So that's the vibe. That's what it does. And we have, right now we have about 9 authors, 9 channels. We have some good ones. We have Neil Donald Walsh. We have Barbara DeAngelis that you mentioned. Lisa Coffey from Coffee Talk Radio. Gerald Forsman and Steve Sikon, our own guys, do theirs. An amazing channel. We just picked up. What's that?
I think Bill has his own also.
Bill has one that is a kind of compilation channel. Okay. We bring, Bill writes it sometimes. Yeah. And then we also bring in some of his new authors that he's representing. So Bill is also an agent for new authors.
Yeah.
Or all authors. We have a Course in Miracles channel now. I don't know if you saw that, but it's pretty cool. It's and it's written by Jerry Jampolsky.
Oh, no kidding! Really?
Yeah. He's New York Times #1 bestseller. We've got these guys that we have now. They've written, I think they've sold over like 30 million books. Yeah. The guys that are on the app are slated to be on it this month. So there's some really good thought leaders on there, and we're continuing to add people.
So are they? So is it? This is kind of a backstage question, but the authors themselves, are they basically sitting down and writing the day's vibe, or are you taking the body of their work and creating small pieces, like chunking it down in order to deliver it out to the world?
It depends. So we will curate for the author if the author wants that. Most of them are writing their own. Now they don't necessarily sit down and write them every day. We have a queue, so they can go in and write, 10, and then they drip feed.
I see. Okay.
Gotcha. They don't have to. It'd be too stressful for those guys to have to do something every night.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So what you said, a lot of them have they have the ability, and a lot of them are using the ability to provide a meditation of some sort also.
We just added the feature, so it's being used. We want to encourage them to use it more. I know Lisa Coffey has done a meditation every day. Now we tell them they can create a library of meditations, so they don't have to create one for every day.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. You can create 10 and then apply one to that makes sense for that message. Yeah.
What's interesting, like what you said, is that that message hit you right at the right time, and it almost seems there's a certain kind of inherent magic almost like when you hear something, you're ready to hear it, it just goes in a certain way.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the right thing. You needed to hear it right then. I mean, that I hear that from readers of my stuff all the time, right? It's like, oh, I just got it just when I needed it. Well, yeah, you probably would have needed it tomorrow too, but
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a sense of, I think they call it synchronicity in
yeah,
this business. But I don't know. Yeah. Sometimes well, I mean, to be honest, I mean, you get vibes sometimes, and it's always good, but sometimes it's more on point than others, right?
right,
And
yeah, it's like
you
fortune
feel it.
cookies. Yeah, you get the fortune cookie, and it's like changes your life.
Yeah. But in general, these are valuable messages, and regardless of what you're doing, it's good. And when we talked about the theme for today, integrating mindfulness,
Yeah,
it's hard to keep continuity in your mindfulness world and throughout your day. And I meditate every morning with few exceptions. But it takes, I believe, a little something like a guru. We're a guru over your shoulder, right? A Something that will keep you integrated, help you maintain the continuity of that mindful state throughout the day.
I love that
Um,
idea. The guru over your shoulder. That's awesome.
yeah,
It's you're kind of you're like an accountability partner for my mindfulness commitment. So I'm committed to mindfulness, but maybe I kind of slip or I forget, or something irritating happens, and it's a lot more satisfying to just like lash out than to kind of come into a place of serenity. And this is just one way. Like in Buddha in the Trenches, I talk about assembling your lifeboats, right? And this is a
right.
life. Right? This is one of the lifeboats. It's a system uh, that's designed to just sort of tease you back into consciousness when maybe you don't have the necessary strength or awareness to do it yourself.
I love the concept of perspective, because perspective is so powerful, but it is, I don't want to say easy. See, the problem is it's not easy necessarily to change your perspective, but the difference between viewing an event in a negative sense and viewing it in a positive light is simply a switch. And if you can master that switch, where and that's what a lot of this is, that's what a lot of these messages do in the middle of the day. I mean, if that was a switch for me, right? Yesterday, whenever I read that, I was dealing with something negative, and it just simply in a microsecond made you realize that there's another way to look at this, whatever it is. This is not a life defining, whatever I'm facing right now is not a life defining moment. It was just an irritation. And I feel, whatever it was, I felt much stronger and better because I didn't let it affect me anymore. Didn't let it change my decision making. So, but perspective, you don't necessarily have to trick yourself. You just have to become a master of perspective, right?
Yeah,
And
that's the key. And there are a number of things that we have at our disposal that can have that impact on perspective. Humor can be really useful in that way, right? Sometimes you just see it through the eyes of humor, or somebody makes a joke about it, and suddenly it's like, oh, and it diffuses the situation. I always think back. You remember the movie Steel Magnolias?
yeah,
So in the movie,
kind
Sally Fields is the mom, and the daughter is Julia Roberts. That was, I think, Julia Roberts, one of her first movies,
of,
and she dies. She has some kind of disease, and she dies. And so Sally Fields is at the funeral, and she's crying, and she's despondent, obviously despondent, and then she just starts. She's like, I just want to hit something. I just want to hit something. I'm so angry. I want to hit something. And Olympia Dukakis grabs a hold of Shirley MacLaine, who's kind of like the curmudgeon in the movie.
I remember this. Yeah.
Here, hit Weezer. And Sally feels just like she stops in her tracks, and then she just starts to laugh, right? And it's like
Yeah.
that laughter through tears thing, the ability to take even the most trying and horrible and painful moment, and that we all have the capacity, even in those most powerful and painful of times, to shift our perspective, to go to a different place
Yeah.
and have more resources. Maybe something that's less painful or less restrictive.
It seems to me that humor, I would have to study it. Well, actually, you're a comedian, right?
Well,
Or
I'm a magician and a hypnotist, and I do sometimes I'm accidentally funny too, but yeah, there's humor in it.
you
Yeah.
just did it. Well done. No,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's the crux of humor, right? It is. I'm sure. I think of Seinfeld. I mean, Seinfeld. They just take horrible human situations and
Right.
adjust the perspective so they're funny, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah,
And that's,
quite a
that's
formula.
why,
It's beauty.
that takes wisdom, it takes intelligence, and it takes a willingness to like go, to step out of your usual way of looking at things.
Sure.
Right. So this, so the vibes can be that stimulus, that can be that thing where it's like, I'm here at this level of dealing with whatever I'm dealing with, and all the thoughts I'm having are at that level of consciousness. But then along comes the guru over my shoulder and says something, and it essentially raises my consciousness. It raises me to a different perspective where I can now apply the new perspective to the existing situation.
And it happens in a microsecond.
Yeah.
It really does. It doesn't, for the most part. I mean, there might be a moment of consideration, right, where you have that. Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. Do I want to stay attached to this? Maybe I want to still be mad or irritated.
Right.
But maybe I
I
don't.
don't. Yeah. And we get feedback. I mean, that's what people tell us, right?
Yeah.
The app, it's a very new app, so we have bugs here and there, and we get support calls. Sometimes people are panicking. They're like, "I've got to get this working," and I'm really like, "No, you don't understand. I'm in the public." This one person called like a few days ago. She said, "I'm in the publishing business. I can't. I mean, my day, you don't know what my days are like." I'm like, "Okay, all right." Like, this thing, and it goes off at 2. I mean, it's just like it's like a respite. I need it. And I'm like, "Okay, all right." She was almost treating it like a drug.
That's
And
very funny. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. I mean,
that
talk about a
moment,
reward, huh?
the moment of recognition that you're actually panicking about not having the app that's helping you not panic is very funny.
Uh,
I remember one day I was late for meditation, right? I was going to go home and meditate, and I was
yeah,
driving home. I was in traffic, and I had planned to meditate at 2, and I wasn't going to get home in time. And I was like really getting agitated in the car because I was going to get home late. And I was like, wait a minute, when is being here now the right time? Like, why not be here now in the car
right.
on my way home to meditate rather than being upset about being. That's the whole practical side of this thing. It's like I could always apply it right now, right? I could always like picture a vibe, picture the fact, what would a vibe say right now if it were able to read my mind and realize how upset I'm being about the fact that I don't have a vibe right now.
That's it.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
funny.
how long did it take that perspective shift? Like a moment.
Yeah. Yeah, in a moment, instantaneous.
In a
So
moment.
powerful stuff. How much of because with the meditations that the thought leaders themselves might put in there, is there also an element of the app where people can just meditate or set? I think there was like a timer or something where you set a timer
Yeah.
to meditate.
I mean, there's a basic meditation timer, and we're going to build out where that's our next step is to kind of further enhance that part of the app. But right now, yeah, you can set a timer for 10 minutes or 5 minutes or 40 minutes and meditate to it. And it's very basic. It's very nice because it's clean and simple. And
A nice little gong at the beginning, a little gong at the end. It was like a soothing sound to let you in and let you out of the meditation. That was kind of nice.
you should check out. We added one track behind it. It's an option. You can turn it on, and it's heart chakra meditation. No, heart chakra. The bowls. Singing bowls.
Singing bowls, Tibetan singing bowls. Yeah.
So it's a heart chakra resonance. So you can turn that on, and we have that today. But that section is going to get built out quite a bit in the next few months. So.
Can you set well, I know you said you could set X number of times that that you would receive a vibe based on that day's message, right? So that's one thing that I could do. I could say every 3 times a day, I want to get a reminder about what Neil Donald Walsh said this morning. Can you also set that to remind you to meditate 3 times, or is that just both the same thing? It's basically I get it's 2 o'clock, it goes off, it says, here's the vibe. And by the way, click here to do the meditation.
No, but that's a good idea.
Okay,
Let's
write
just
it
keep that between
down.
us, okay? The
Yeah,
meditation reminder function.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that'd be great. That would
We
be
can't
great.
have the competitors hearing about that. So
Yeah,
let's
we'll
just keep
cut that
it
out of it.
here. Please.
But
Um, no, yeah, that's clever. A little meta.
exactly.
I mean, in effect, it is right. I mean, you get the reminder. Um, you can tell yourself that's the time you need to meditate.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But for the most part, look, I mean, this app, part of what let's put it here. I mean, part of what we wanted was something that didn't demand a lot of the user.
Mhm.
It's sort of mindfulness for busy people, right? Because we expect you to meditate. We expect you to please everyone go learn to tackle your thoughts in meditation, because that's what you're learning to do. But I think that and to be present, the vibe works well with that meditation practice, and that it it gives you the contemplation. I mean, a big part of Buddhism, and not, by the way, all mindfulness is not necessarily related to Buddhism, but if you look at Buddhism, a big part of that is contemplation, sitting with thoughts, and this is the function that we sort of provide. We provide you something in the morning to contemplate,
Mm-hmm.
and that's important, and but it's quick. And so part of the Vibes design is it doesn't take much time. We're talking 1 minute read at the beginning of the day,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe three. You probably should get 3 reminders, if 2 or 3 reminders during the day.
Mm-hmm.
That tiny bit of time can be so powerful.
It
Right.
it's hugely powerful, and actually, it's a lot of the studies now on these things that break our set, that break our pattern, that take us away from our habitual thinking, that interrupt it even for a moment. Like some of the studies on astonishment, show people a beautiful scene on their desktop at a particular, for a minute, and it improves their productivity and their endurance, just because it interrupted that constant, never-ending stream of thought. So yeah, contemplative thought, quiet-mindedness, beauty, astonishment, all those things are useful tools to keep us from spinning ourselves tighter and tighter and tighter to the point where we're totally exhausted, totally overwhelmed, and not getting any fun out of life.
Right.
So this is powerful stuff. And I appreciate you mentioning that it is really quick. That's one of the things that I think is really, one of the takeaways from this is, if you're a busy business person out there and you're trying to up your productivity and lower your blood pressure, get the Vibe. Get the app. The app it's very inexpensive. I think you're giving like a week away for free too. Am I right about that?
Yeah, you get a week to try it out, and
Yeah.
you can bail if you want. But
And then it's only $299 a month, right after that.
it's $2.99.
Yeah, $2.99 a month. So it's well worth your time. And so tell people, Jim, if they want to pursue this further, if they want to learn more about Vibe, if they want to do it, what do they do? How do they get that?
We have a website that's pretty good. It talks a lot about the app and who's on it. It's called it's at vibe.me. Get it?
Oh, yeah, Vibe Me.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about the name. There's a large school of thought that relates vibrational energy to your state of being and your state of health and your state of mindfulness. Generally, people relate a high vibration to a state of being mindful and alert and aware. Aware. So that's where the name comes from, of course. And so you can go to vibe.me, and there's a place where you can learn all about it there, and then you can click the download app button there, and it'll take you. It should detect what phone you're on and take you to the right store, whether it's Android or or iTunes or Apple.
Now, on the other hand, if you're somebody like Bill Gladstone, you can't do that because you don't have a smartphone.
One of our company owners doesn't even own a smartphone.
Hopefully, he's watching this, and we're shaming him into changing his
No
ways.
way. He
No,
loves the fact that he never got suckered into this frenzy.
I could see that. I could see that.
Yeah.
There's definitely there's something to be said for being, kind of being your own person and not being pulled into this cultural imperative.
Right.
And I could
this whole Facebook thing.
But you guys are making valuable use of it, and that's the important thing. You're giving people who are going to be on there anyway. Let it interrupt your habitual ways.
Sure.
That's great. Well, that's awesome. So we're going to be wrapping up here in a couple of minutes, and first of all, I want to thank you, Jim, for being with me. Don't leave yet. I want to remind everyone, first of all, go to vibe.me to pick up the app and learn more about it, and try it out for a week and see what you think. I think you'll find, like I've only had it for 48 hours. I'm enjoying it. I think it's a great thing. It's a useful tool. And again, we're all looking for applied mindfulness, meaning something we could do during the day that doesn't require us to run off to the ashram to get some consciousness. So this is a good thing for you to use. And another good thing for you to use is my book, Buddha in the Trenches.
Yes,
Get Buddha in the Trenches. It'll really help you to kind of release some of your stress and bring happiness into your day-to-day life. So hey, listen, this has been a lot of fun. We always like to end our show with a quote for the day, a metaphor for the day, and a challenge for the day. And the challenge is going to go to Jim here in a second, but the metaphor, this is the classic one, is the monkey mind, right? In Buddhism, we talk about the monkey mind. Our minds are constantly swinging from the branches like a monkey, from thought to thought to thought, and we almost never get a moment of silence. And that's why in picking up a tool like the Vibe tool, you're trying to interrupt the monkey mind. You're trying to interrupt the constant stream of thought. Not that you're going to stop thinking, but rather you're going to find yourself in a place other than that constant stream, and you realize you're not your thoughts. So the metaphor is the monkey mind. Think about monkey mind and how that applies to you this week. And the quote, it's not an exact quote, but this is something that I heard Ram Dass say years ago. And he was talking about the difference between psychotherapy and mindfulness practices or meditative practices. And he said, if you think of the mind as a room, psychotherapy, conventional psychotherapy, is like rearranging the furniture in the room. Each thought is part of your mind. So your mind is a room and the thoughts are the furniture, and you're trying to rearrange the furniture. And he said mindfulness is leaving the room. Right? Just being able to get out, not to have to figure out where everything goes, but just to be in a different place. So that and then again, like we were saying, Jen, perspective. Leave the room to be able to gain enough perspective to know what to do when you go back in the room. So that's my quasi quote for you for today. And so now, before we wrap things up here, Jim, if you would be so kind, I'd love to see if you could share a challenge of some sort to our guests that they can take with them for the week.
Well, this is a big one, and it may not be just for the week, right? But to become a master of perspective. And, that, I guess, let's make that the lifelong endeavor, because that's really what that is.
Okay.
Maybe for the week, recognize those moments when a shift in perspective can make all the difference, because actually shifting your perspective when you're reacting, when you're kind of in a state of anger or frustration is actually very challenging to learn. It's difficult to learn the trick. But maybe for the week, just recognize at least those moments where you have an opportunity to shift your perspective. And that alone will probably help you shift your perspective a little.
Just saying to yourself is probably a better way to look at this. There's probably a different place in which I can see this. If I were enlightened, this wouldn't bother me.
Yeah, that's one way to do it. If I were enlightened.
This wouldn't bother me. The other one for me is, people always say when they're in a crisis, they someday will look back at this and laugh, right? And so I always say, why wait?
Well, yeah, right.
So
It's all about that moment, and
it's
you
all
have a
about the
choice.
moment.
There's a choice. No,
Beautiful.
bad things happen. You don't have a
Yeah.
choice if you're running into the back of another car, or if you're watching your house burn down, and there are a lot of people who are challenged this week.
Yeah, it's been a tough week, and our hearts go out to all those people, and hopefully they'll find peace and serenity through this very challenging time.
Right.
So, Jim, listen, thanks so much. Please share my sadness with Bill that we didn't get to have him join us on this as well, and that we're going to definitely want to pick back up with him at some point, and maybe we'll get him a smartphone for his birthday. And but
And then
this
try to get
has
him
been
to use
great.
it.
I mean, I've really enjoyed spending some time with you, and hopefully someday we'll do some business together. Maybe I'll be one of your vibers. And,
Yeah, maybe you will.
yeah,
I love your message. It's fantastic. It's so on point.
I appreciate that. Thanks so much. Guys, have a great week. Remember to lead consciously and profit responsibly. Jim, thank you so much for your time. Everybody,
Thanks,
take good care. And we're going to actually, we don't have a show for next week. We're going to be taking a winter hiatus. So go back and watch some of our reruns and enjoy them. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions. If you'd like to leave any feedback, it's stevetaubman@gmail.com. Thanks, everybody. Take good care. Bye-bye.